Well, good afternoon, Aristo.
Good morning, Ron. Another day of discussion. We'll try to keep it not so long this time. It's 4:15 where I am. It's a nice rounded time. So there are many things I'd like to talk about today, and I will
Please go
try.
ahead.
Okay, I'll try to weave the basics in a kind of coherent stream, if I may. I listened to your video from 2 days ago, the one about belief. And I'm a big proponent of playing with reality in the sense of playing with perception. And one way to do that is to play with words and play with synchronistic patterns. And how can we do that? This helps us because it's a kind of oracle. It kind of destructures our perception and our givens and our logic and allows deeper intuitions to come through. So we're using, just like you use tarot cards or coin tosses or whatever, and the so-called randomness of it precipitates into a sense of meaning when we interpret it. In the same way, we can look at words. And it's very interesting because the word believe is belie, but you have the VE there. And if you look at numerology again in the Hebrew alphabet and as it transfers to the English and all of that, V and F, belief and believer, they come from the same letter, and that letter happens to be Vav. We talked about that in the last. It has the number 6, and it's represented by a nail, a tent peg, and a penis. Now, the basic idea is a connection, a bridging that fertilizes, but at the same time, it's also a kind of pivoting role. So it's basically a stable axis around which you can put a door hinge and pivot a doorway, or a maypole, where you have the dancers pivoting around the central pole. So it's a sense of a fertility spiral. So how can you take the belie and it connects to an F or a V? The E corresponds to a Hebrew letter H or a Phoenician letter A, and this represents the number 5. It's the number of light. It also indicates feminine gender when we're talking about nouns. It also indicates basically that something is alive. So in a sense, it enlivens the letter V. That's why you have the 4-letter name of God, for example, in Judaism, Jehovah. It's a Y, an H, a V, and an H. Yah is basically the core name of the divinity, and the VE is their connection to life, is their fertilizing, masculine, penetrating ability to enliven things. So in this case, how do we enliven the lie? Does that mean that the lie is going to come to life and move against us? No, because lies are by nature dead things. They're not alive. They don't have truth and life force in them. They don't represent them. So we're basically building our reality on a corpse. And it's a rotting corpse. A lie cannot sustain reality because nature has the gift of decomposition. I mean, decay is not an evil thing. Again, there's another word. What does the word evil spell when you put it backwards? It spells lie. So take the word belie, put it on a pivot, and rotate it till you see the backside. The truth is in the backside of the lie. If you reverse the lie, then you have belief. Belief is the reversal of a lie. It's not blind belief. It's always an action that we take in order to transform the lies in our life into something that is meaningful for us and something upon which we can rely. So believing is an act that's creative. It is not a passive act. Even allowing is a creative act. It is not passive. It is because that's what the psychopaths want. Believe in us, or believe in this religion, or all of this stuff. That would be the lie. But again, the psychopathic cleverness takes something that is meaningful to us and reverses it without throwing it away, so we cannot find what is that meaning anywhere because it's already under our noses and what they're using against us. It's like this. Many people call this Earth a prison planet. So instead of, and they say we have to get out of the prison, we have to leave and all of this. But what happens if somebody comes to your planet and turns it into a prison? Do you say, well, forget it then. I don't like this planet anymore. Now it's a prison. I got to get out. You say, well, no, I want to take down the prison from the planet. I want to reverse the whole situation of the prison and turn it into a paradise, into an abode of freedom as opposed to an abode of imprisonment. So the only option I see in our predicament is transformation, changing the form, because the essence of everything is truth. Even lies hold truth in their essence. If you go deep into it, it's always hidden, but it's also mostly under our very noses. So when you confront the lie and you're able to grasp it and turn it over, reverse it, invert it, basically get into it so much, and that's a very uncomfortable dynamic. Very, very uncomfortable, because we have the sense of being betrayed. And in the end, if we really look deeply, it's ourselves that we hate here. We're pissed off at ourselves for falling for it. We have a sense that when you fall for a lie, it's not just somebody else that betrayed you, it's you that betrayed yourself, because where was your discernment at the time? You know,
Yeah.
why? It's almost like, you know, hey man, you know, what am I here? What, you know, am I that stupid? But the whole thing is that, well, your discernment actually operates after the betrayal, because that's what exercises it. To be able to take a lie and to transform it gives you an ability of discernment. To be able to discern gives you an ability to take a lie and transform it. The chicken or the egg type of thing. But it's a responsibility. So there's no way we can get at the truth in the given situation when we lack a certain precedence. At the same time, many tend to harden themselves because they believe being naive is a bad thing, that we have to end our innocence. And I say, why not live the paradox of being naive and innocent and being experienced and wise at the same time? Because innocence and naivete is not just a state of being ignorant. It's a state of being spontaneous, being allowing, as you said, trusting, but trusting based on a working discernment. If you have a working discernment, then your trust is based on your own sense of meaning. In that sense, even if you confront a lie, you can tell yourself, look, I'm learning discernment, which means if I confront a lie, my job, my challenge is to be able to explore it and see if I can invert it where it's not meaningful for me. Because one thing we all have is our sense of meaning, and it's been twisted and it's been distorted and all of that. But that's why, you know, that's why we have these discussions and why people are into esoteric stuff at the same time. It helps them focus and look at the world in a different way and experience it so that they can actually enter the whole realm that is full of lies, and not just pure lies. There's no such thing as one, like I said, the best lie, as people know, is a half-truth. It's one where the truth isn't just hidden completely, but where the tail end is showing just a little bit wiggling like bait. And you end up saying, well, I feel something from this. And so you go for the bait, and then the deception comes in. Psychopaths are very, very good at setting things up that way. But at the same time, if you chronically enter a state of setting things up that way, then you end up realizing that believing a lie is the best way to make others believe it. And so you end up a victim of your own circumstance. So this is what's happening to the psychopaths. I'd like to weave that first video with the other one where you talked about the ambassador and made a plea to the powers that be in the socio-political spectrum. Because they're in the same boat. And I've also been looking at, some interesting channelings from Barbara Marciniak, the recent one that she made in 2013 and 14. And I'm not really into channelings, but...
I listened to all 5 hours of that, by the way. The first part I liked, the second part I didn't care for.
Yeah. I got some... Yeah, I got some stuff. There's more of them, and some of them have information that I can resonate with. But the thing is, they say, the reason I do listen to them is because she admits, or the Pleiadians admit, that symbolic understanding is the key to moving through this zone. And when you look at the words and interpret them, and we play with them, and we find wisdom in the playing of them, it's symbolic understanding. We're not taking things literally, and thus we're able to step beyond the matrix, even though we don't know what's beyond the matrix. We can dance outside of the walls of the prison in a playful manner by using the prison itself. The whatever's in there. You can tie yourself to a little grappling hook on the edge of the prison and just swing outside a little bit and get some fresh air before your sense of fear and insecurity and habit makes you jump right in again. And that's okay. Because in the end, we're going to realize that all of this may be serious, but that playfulness, paradoxically, is the key to resolving serious situations. Just like wisdom is best manifest in a context of innocence and naivete. I mean, my naivete gets me into trouble these days. For all the meditation and intuition and whatever, I am still a naive person in many ways. I will make assumptions based on, certain considerations for another person and end up missing out on a whole other set of considerations that are matrix-oriented, maybe survival-oriented. So sometimes in trying to not hurt someone's feelings, I end up getting in arguments and all of this. And it seems like I'll lie because nobody can, well, come on, what, are you bullshitting me? You're actually thinking that way? Who are you trying to fool? But I'm not going to give up that sense, because if I give up that sense, then I enter a whole other context of personality. I tried that. It's not me. It actually makes me sick to chronically be a suspicious person, or one who considers my best material interest as opposed to another's best material interest continuously. It's like always having to keep the 10 Commandments in your head to make sure you don't accidentally step on anybody's toes. So that's my way of doing it, and it gets me into trouble. But each time I get into trouble, I have to face something that is otherwise very slippery. But facing it is not a personal thing. I don't want to get caught up in ego things. Somebody tells me, so how are you doing? And I say, great, even though I may be in incredible turmoil or some inner upheaval. Why? Because, well, it's all right if my external circumstances are manageable. In other words, that my life isn't in an external upheaval or life-threatening situation or security-threatening situation. And if the intent to do me harm from my environment or other people is also kept at a manageable level. That includes personal, interpersonal, emotional harm, all of these things. People feel their, feet are trampled, they intend to do you harm, even though it may not seem so. People make promises, something occurs, they can't keep them because there's a whole complicated set of circumstances in their lives. It's almost like if you go to a casino and you gamble, you will start winning. And then if you try to gamble again, you will start losing. Beginner's luck, and this is way too common. I mentioned this before, I think. It's way too common to be random. I mean, it's a phenomenon and nobody really talks about it. Why is there? Do we get in our own way? Some people say so. Is there a collective thought form, that some subconscious zone that turns toward us if we start winning or moving or succeeding? Are we being tripped up by a combination of our own hang-ups and the projected hang-ups of others? We're all connected after all. So what are the ramifications, positive and negative, of that connection? I mean, it's not just all, we're connected, so it's all automatic paradise once we realize it. Well, if we're connected, we're also connected to everybody's hang-ups. We're connected to everybody's pain. We're connected to everybody's talents. People are possessive of, whatever they have. So if you're connected to another person, then you can read their talents and absorb them without draining the person. It's different than vampirism. Some people basically learn by mimicry. and then you end up succeeding where they fail, that person might be envious of you, especially if they see you're doing the same thing. This happens all the time. And then we say, no, we should actually be glad that somebody is succeeding. Well, that's well and good, but what if people are glad all the way to the grave? I mean, one person succeeds, and then everybody else around them fails, and they're glad that this person succeeds, and they all die of starvation. I mean, that's the big fear. It's like, I'm suffering, and yet I have to be glad for that person, and I feel envy. But why do I feel these things? What's the ramification? Does it go back maybe to the sense that we are connected? That if I succeed, there's a certain sense of responsibility here. I can't just succeed in a vacuum. Competition tells us that we do succeed in the vacuum by removing all of the inferior components. Meritocracy is also that way when it's competitive. I don't care who talks about meritocracy. I mean, you could easily say that it's, well, a slave master may talk about the relative meritocracy of his slaves. I want the good slaves to come forward, and I'll throw the rest into the abyss. You know, so the thing is that if I succeed, the bottom line is that I have succeeded within the context of my connection with other people. And maybe I have managed to push away all of the obstacles, all of the internal negativity, so they have to carry them now. And they become my shadow, and I just end up in a perpetual state of warfare against my shadow, because I don't take into account there is no such thing as success in a vacuum, no matter what happens. Otherwise, there wouldn't be resentment. Resentment occurs for a reason. We tend to excuse things that, well, people are just bad. They're just psychopaths. Just get rid of them. There's a bug there, swap it. We don't say, well, that's well and good if we're separate. But if we're interconnected, what's going on here? Yeah. It's a very, very difficult path, very difficult path. And so we have the number 6. The number 6, as we said in the previous video, is the number of interconnections. It's the number of the principle of interconnection, that can be neutral, so it can act as a pivot, or it can be fertile, so it can act as a bridge or a sender of sperm or fertilizing dynamics, or, it can be a principle, it can be a manifest dynamic, which means it's a network of interconnections, or it can be a systemic dynamic, which means a full web, where you don't consider the individual strands, but the presence of the web itself. And I mentioned that the crux of the problem, numerology helps us in many ways. And it might help us to look at our mythology and numerology and find the crux of the problem in the number 6, 6, and 6. And so, especially from the fact that both the myth of Lucifer as it stands today and the book of Revelations are products of the last 2,000 years. Did it get cut off?
Yes, it totally went down, and there we reversed images. So I'll see how that goes when we edit it. So gets cut off, you were saying, and then the video got cut off.
Okay, it's 9:33, so it's a significant time. The fact is that this is a gap. Look at the synchronistic pattern. Our video got cut off at 9:33. 3 plus 3 equals 6, but it's a dynamic of 2 3s. Let's not get over analytical about this, but let's just say that the Freemasons are very partial to the number 33, as well as 333. And that is a number of purposeful action, principle of purposeful action, as well as the specific intent or will to make something happen. The ox goad, a whip. The whip that hits the ox and makes it go forward, that drives a motive force. In any case, the crux of the problem numerologically is the number 6. And I say crux because, as I said in the previous video, if you look at Jesus, he's got 3 nails on the cross, and these all represent the glyph of the letter Vav, which is the number 6. Today it became an F, a V, a U, a W. We have it so important in English that somehow it got analyzed into 4 separate letters in our English alphabet. Now, the crux of the issue here that I wanted to talk about is that, well, before we look at that, let's look at another analogy of synchronistic interest. The clock, the digital clock, is a product of the modern age. Up until recently, you have been doing videos focusing on the number 444. And something happened, you met this woman and all of this, a transition happened, you've connected to this essence that you call the divine lover, and this all has happened within the context of 555. You're focused on that context. You were moving with your lover, human and divine, toward an interconnecting dynamic, and it's 666. When people break promises, they break the connecting. It's all about the relationship, breaking the relationship. They break trust, they break the relationship. That is the fragmentation within the number 666 is connected to all of that. But to understand 666 again, you move back, and you can't heal it without an ample supply of life force in all of the context of it, as a principle, as a manifest expression, and even as a universal presence. And this occurs through 555. You are feeling that life force now and digesting it. You call it the divine lover. Someone else might connect to the Pleiadian and say, well, taproot, ground into the core of the planet, and you will feel a warm vibration that will come up and fill your cells. It's very similar to what you described in the divine lover experience. We are standing on a planet that loves us. You can call it divine, but we are the children of this planet, and the psychopaths are trying to convince us. I've seen this time and again as some pseudo-ecological thing. The planet is angry at us. It hates us. We're all like cockroaches and we have to be killed. No, man, the planet loves all the life on its, it's the planet that set up all these parameters of predator, prey, ecological systems. It's the planet's shortcoming. We are here to help the planet to transcend that shortcoming, to bring better options. That's why we're able to do that. That's why we're able to mimic nature and complement nature and do all these things. We have this. This is our human drive. We're not meant to be dependents and simply naked running in the forest, like other animals. We don't want to be that way. And if we repress that, it ends up in an alienated psychopathy. Along this issue, which is purely human, is also another issue, which is the control issue, what the Pleiadians say, the Anunnaki. And of course, the context is these are aliens and flying saucers or whatever. Well, I don't think so. I think they're interdimensional beings, interdimensional and, for the most part, non-corporeal, as we interpret corporeality. Because when you have a dream, in the dream, you're corporeal in the context of the dream. You experience a body and it experiences sensations. However, from the standpoint of your waking life, it's virtual, and it may well be virtual. The fact remains that a molecular structure is far more dense and coherent than a dreamtime structure, an astral structure, a plasma energy structure, or whatever you want to call it. The myths of jinn and all that say they have all these powers because they don't have the restrictions of materiality. However, materiality has something else. When something occurs physically, it is very impacting, much more impacting than it is when it occurs astrally, no matter if the corresponding thing occurs physically. It is substantial, and it is substantial because of the earth essence. So we say again that we are spiritual spirits having a terrestrial experience. Well, that's, again, and from my perspective, it's almost like saying I'm a sperm having a human child experience. Well, the earth has given us the part of us that makes us different from spirits. So I'm a spirit fertilizing a material dynamic and becoming a new being. I am this being that is the fertilization of two aspects, and I am learning what that means. And what it really means is that I am not under anyone's control. I am sovereign. We are understanding and moving to learn what sovereignty means. It means responsibility, among other things.
Absolutely.
Being exactly responsive, allowing, open, but at the same time, responsibility means that we chart our course. in accordance to our deeper truth, to our sense of meaning. So it means being honest with ourselves and throwing away the Ten Commandments, because if we're honest with ourselves, we don't need the Ten Commandments. If our honesty leads us to a place where we end up lying to ourselves and call it honesty, then life will reflect that to us. Something's not going to work. And the part of us that tells us this is the receptive part, the feminine part, our desire nature. This is the part, the Anunnaki, as a kind of essence of what's driving the psychopaths, let's put it that way. The intelligence behind all of this as a kind of, let's put it this way, psychopaths are disconnected from everybody else on many levels, but they are connected to something. They have an inspiration. They have a plan, and they have a sense of synchronicity all their own. They have strange insights into people, and they recognize other psychopaths. All of these can be understood in a context in a similar manner how someone else says, well, divine love guides me. Divine love, is the basic principle of where I move, good or bad or whatever. But the psychopaths has a different kind of guidance. I don't call it demonic or devilish, but this is the guidance that has affected, according to the Pleiadians again, more than this planet. And we are here to heal the issue behind this. And so do these people, anybody who is in a high place, anybody who creates, anybody who moves forward, who becomes prominent, before they come to the spotlight of the psychopaths, the secular psychopaths, they will come into the spotlight of the Anunnaki. And I don't believe in gods and togas and stuff like that. I'm not putting it in that sense. I'm putting it in the sense of a principle that is far too nebulous to really be able to pinpoint, but that we can feel it. If we feel the interconnections, if we feel the web, we can feel that right where separation occurs, there's also something interfering. There's something whose prominent motive force, whose prominent letter 30, the L of the word El, God, like Elohim, is basically control. It's not guidance. It's not suggestion. It's not connection. It's not teaching. It's control. And so this, again, as I said, is an issue that anyone, and control is different than sovereignty, because that's turned against us as well, Anybody who goes against the dictates is somebody who wants to be in control, And it's, yes, they want to be sovereign. Words can also be deceptive. They've been used against us many times because these control freaks, as we may call them, corporeal and non-corporeal, are interested in knowing everything because they use knowledge to maintain control. And they take knowledge away in order to maintain control. And not just intellectual knowledge, because the heart guidance is also a form of knowledge. It's where your discernment comes from. Knowledge has been separated into a higher or mental or, whatever, data, things like that, digitized, and from the actual visceral knowledge, when it's supposed to be a singular continuum of our sovereignty, or expression of sovereignty. Our honest perception leads us to this, no matter where it goes. So before I conclude, let me just take the digital clock again. The digital clock is a synchronistic symbol of modern times. The electricity that goes through it is 60 hertz, just like through everything. And this electric cycle pounds our energy bodies into an enforced timetable of perception. It's an electromagnetic cage. You can't get away from it because it's all over the planet. However, if there's a blackout, notice how the establishment tells us that we should freak out because we're all going to die. Civilization is going to collapse. 3 days of darkness. That's been bandied about. But ever notice what happens when there's a blackout, how you end up relaxing? You almost can take a sigh of relief. If the lights turn out in your neighborhood, if you really focus on your inner tensions or whatever, you notice that it's almost like a weight has been lifted off. And if you can feel that, you can sense that, and when they turn up, all of a sudden, everything gets back to normal. You're all, you're aligned along this grid. that people tell you is sanity, that people tell you is where you're supposed to be. So the digital clock is a measure of this grid in a way, because 60 hertz connects to 60 seconds, 60 minutes, et cetera, which is also the Gregorian calendar, which has also been put in during the last less than 1,500 years, 2,000 years, let's say. It's also part of a preparation of circumstance that we can say, well, it's more convenient to just say, well, the Anunnaki principle of control is behind this, you know, but it seems like a conspiracy. Where do all these, you know, why did they put in a Gregorian calendar? Why did they force the music to go into 440 hertz when it used to be 432 hertz? I said 423 last time. So all of these conspirational dynamics, it's not that you explain them and explain them away, but it's convenient to say, look, there's a feeling behind this. This feeling of something is trying to be in control, and it may be the collective that we are denying. The fact remains that your clock will give you the numbers up to 555 as triple numbers. The clock cannot give you 666.
Right.
The issue of 666 remains out of reach, because the true 666 is ecstasy. It's interconnection. It's the grounding of the divine lover in sharing it with another, all through the web. If you have the true 666, then magic becomes effortless. You don't have to do the artificial tangent of 777 in the Illuminati type way. That's a distortion.
So instead of mark of the beast, it's the mark of the avatar?
It's exactly that. It's the mark of the avatar. The beast is simply the shadow of the avatar. And you don't become the avatar unless you heal the beast, you incorporate it, you heal the gaps. But the thing is, there is one secret of the digital clock that is very, very interesting. If the digital clock transcends time, and you basically say, okay, it's not going to measure time anymore, but I'm going to turn on the circuits, everything. What are you going to get? You turn on all the LCDs, and so they're all on. You get three numbers. You get 888. You look at your clock and just fill all the LCDs. It's going to be 888. So 888 is the realization. Exactly.
That's what you said last week.
Exactly. It's Christ consciousness. Technically, in the Hebrew alphabet, in their numerology, it's the mouth, not the mouth, but a womb principle that generates life. And then the womb birthing life, the experience of life being born, of verbal creativity, all of these things are in the manifest version. And in the cosmic version, it's the womb of nature. All of nature birthing life together from its deep potential. The avatar is one with that. I'm talking about the avatar beyond any religion. You cannot have an avatar who is not one with the divine feminine womb, because the avatar always brings in new possibilities. Where do those possibilities come from? They come from a living essence. Look at the Bible. In the beginning, look how they misinterpreted this. This is very obvious if you look at the Hebrew. And if you look at it in English, it's in Hebrew, it's Bereshith. And the Hebrew tradition says that if you want to understand the whole meaning of the Torah, you need to understand the meaning of the first word. And if you want to understand the meaning of the first word, you need to understand the meaning of the first letter. That's B, Beit. Beit is the house. It's the place that contains. It's an even more primal principle than the womb, because it comes out as any form of wrapping around something that wants to become, giving it substance, giving it a context, giving it form. So Rashith means beginnings, a beginning. It means an initial principle. But when you put the B, it's a qualifier, and it says in, but there is no article. It's not in the beginning. It's also with, or by means of. So the first word is by means of the first principle, by means of a first principle, by means of a beginning. Within the beginning, God created heaven, blah, blah, blah. So a beginning was something that pre-existed. It's an entity, it's a being. And then within all of this, you have the concept of the deep, of the waters. And these are the waters of the primal womb. The goddess essentially is inferred in the Old Testament, but only implied, but her essence runs through the whole thing if you really want to get the truth behind the code and the surface things. You cannot understand anything without this dynamic. And so when one becomes one with the goddess principle as a being that transcends the matrix and time, and one can bring in new possibilities, and thus one becomes an avatar. One becomes a true child of the goddess, even a lover of the goddess. You know, humans have ancestral terms, whatever, but in the cosmic sense, lover, child, parent, all of these things merge because you move beyond the dimensional parameters and distinctions. So the clock itself represents the matrix, the digital clock. But if you turn it on, even as it, when it's regulated and controlled, it puts us in a certain, you know, parameter of temporal duration. If you turn it on in full, it gives us 888. And there is no 777 unless you turn it on a certain way. It's almost like the 777 is an artificial thing because it represents a challenge that you cannot really get unless you really understand and embody the 666, which again requires the 555, etc. So you're comprehending the 555. You're not comprehending it, you're living it. You're living the 555 and the gateway into the 666. So you're understanding that what other people see as the beast, you're experiencing as the divine lover. Your interconnections with everything are expanding in a way where everybody else sees a network of insanity. And yet you're also perceiving the network of insanity. So this is what I believe the essence, I don't know what he meant, you know, where he's coming from and all that specifically, but the archetypal nature of the information your ambassador friend is giving points to this, that yes, you are, if you can move through this, because you express to other people in a way that they can very easily relate, and in an emotional manner as well, there is a transference of this kind of potential, of the divine lover, because that's what the Pleiadians also say, in the sense of, okay, open your aura, feel your presence in space, and if you do, you will feel the presence of the divine lover. If you don't, then there's something to be healed, a separation to keep you from that. Feel the core of the earth, bring it up into yourself as the divine lover. I mean, that's the big and as you do, you have access to this energy. It becomes, you can heal, it can come out of your hands, it can come out of your eyes, you share it, you circulate it, and you can enter the realm of true magic when you do so, and the realm of true 7-7, as opposed to the false, intellectualized Illuminati. That's where I wanted to essentially end today and weave all these topics together.
So, thank you, Aristo. Appreciate it again, and hang on there. We'll do some talking after we're finished here because we didn't do much before. So we'll talk to you again next week. And thank you and namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Bye-bye.